I'm ready. Are you ready?
You best be ready. We're live.
Are we live now? Oh no! What am I gonna do? Oh, God, I think I just turned up the light. Seriously, it's very bright. Just don't know what to do. It's raining out there.
Raining out there, but the sun is shining on you with your light.
The sun is always shining working with you, Kim.
I don't think anybody believes that.
Well, since you kicked your imposter syndrome into touch, Kim, I think, I'm still working in my kitchen, but we've made progress, haven't we, really?
Yeah, we have.
So the main reason, so we've got two reasons that we are, well, three reasons really. We've got one reason is to talk about.
We'll have four.
What?
If you keep going, we'll have four.
Look, we've got three. The main reason is because we're British. We love to talk about the weather, and the weather where I am is awful. What's the weather like where you are, Kim?
It's beautiful. It actually looks like a Simpsons sky out there with like kind of drawn on clouds.
You know, you can go off people.
Yeah, you have to like them first.
That's not very nice.
I was only joking.
I'm really upset now. You've ruined my day.
Oh, I love you really.
Not really. The good news is that so there's the other two reasons that we're here is to talk about International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day, which is tomorrow, just to remind everyone that that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. And also, the third reason that we're here is to actually talk about some kind of, well, it was a bit of bad behavior really on the part of one of our guests in the past few weeks. And actually he wasn't really very compassionate towards the audience. And the situation is that we've had some complaints about this particular broadcast. So we need to address that as well. And I'll read that out. But I think, first of all, we've got to talk about the weather. So clearly it's raining here and I've got a bright light. So I feel fine, but sunny where you are, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's no positives. Without the rain, there can't be a rainbow.
Exactly. That's a very good point. I thought I'd gone off you there, Kim, but you brought it all back.
It's all about mindset.
It's exhausting, isn't it? Exhausting.
Not working with me. Oh, where do I go for testimonials when I've got you, eh?
Well, did I write you a testimonial? I'm not sure I did, but I will sooner or later. Sooner or later, I'll write you one. So look, Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day is happening tomorrow. Lots of people are already getting involved with the conversation. We've got loads of events that are happening. And if you want to find out more information about that, you can go to overcomingimposter.com. And then you can get your 7-step guide as well, right, to overcoming imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, research shows that actually one of the first steps to overcoming your imposter is actually to talk about it, which is one of the reasons why we've launched International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day, to try and create that safe space for people to be able to discuss it. Because it's fascinating. In the last couple of weeks, we've had a number of conversations where people didn't know what it was, but when you start talking about it, they're like, oh, that explains it. That's either how I feel or that's how somebody in my team feels. So what we wanted to be able to do with the Awareness Day was be able to provide some free support, resources, and also share some stories. So we've got some amazing people joining us for panel discussions, for sharing their stories. We've got a whole host of podcasts, interviews with people talking about their imposter and how they overcame it. And then obviously we've got the free download of the 7 steps to overcome your imposter and turn your inner critic into your inner cheerleader, which is so nice when you can flip that switch.
Well, I'm not really happy about having an inner cheerleader, but we can kind of work on that. Yeah. Anyway, so when it comes to the political correctness gone wrong that we actually are addressing here, we had a complaint or two, in fact, And we were talking about being bullied at work, and one of our guests, he didn't actually show any compassion towards the situation at all. And I think at the time we should have probably muted him and said, look, hold on a minute, this isn't quite right. Because basically, so one of the people who was watching said, I left the podcast because your guest was victim blaming. Of course, he is entitled to his point of view, but in my opinion, it's that kind of 1970s denial attitude which perpetuates the systemic corporate bullying. Your talk was about people inspiring confidence in others. I was just pointing out the flip side of that. And it goes on. I basically apologized to the chap. And that's why we now have a disclaimer that basically says that, we will handle these things as best we can in the future, but also, we're not to blame for our guests' archaic opinions, to be frank.
Yeah, I guess the challenge that we've got is obviously, people are entitled to their opinion, and I think it's okay for us to disagree, but not to disrespect. And I think we struggled somewhat in how to respectfully navigate that conversation, and it led us to a reflection of our reflections, which has then allowed us to say, well, actually, let's just be a bit more upfront about it, because we can have different opinions, and that's okay, but it's about how we respect each other. And I think one of the challenges that we've got is often when you're not in the situation, it can be easy to have an opinion of it. And we can say, well, you shouldn't feel bullied because they can't bully you without your, without you letting them, which I think was broadly kind of the sentiment. And actually, personally, I disagree. How people make you feel is how people make you feel. I remember, as you know, when I had challenges with a stalker, one of their issues was, I've not done anything to scare you. But actually, you don't get to decide what scares me. I get to decide what scares me. And that's true of anybody who's feeling bullied. You don't get to decide whether or not they should feel bullied. They get to decide whether or not they feel bullied. And it's then a case of how do you create the right safe space for them to be able to talk about it and find a way through, because it might not be the intention for them to feel bullied, but it might be the impact. And we talk a lot, don't we, about people's intentions versus their impact. Often what we're trying to do and what we actually do are misaligned. But if we're able to talk about it and create that safe space to talk about it, then we can start to break down some of these barriers that are creating workplaces that are toxic for the people. And we know that, research shows that 57% of people leave their boss, not the organization. So if we think about that, more than 1 in 2 people that leave you. So that should give us all the kick that we need to go and do the work to help ourselves be better leaders and create that safe space for our people to talk to us.
Yeah, I think very much so. And, how this all connects together with overcoming imposter syndrome and the confidence spectrum that we are putting together is fascinating, really, because confidence affects your behavior. It affects your behavior, it affects your competence. And those two elements, competence and confidence, are, connected totally. Some people are delusionary. Some people do think that they could be a brain surgeon and walk straight into an operating theatre, whereas other people are more realistic about their abilities. And, all of these things fit in. Imposter syndrome is on one side of the spectrum, and obviously the other side of the confidence spectrum is the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is where people think that they're brain surgeons and they've never actually been in an operating theatre.
Absolutely. And we all fit somewhere on that spectrum. And the beauty of the spectrum is that actually we can move. So we don't just stay in one place. And there might be certain situations where actually we go, well, actually, I'm quite confident about this situation. But then we'll end up in a different situation and we'll go, I'm less confident here, or actually, I don't feel like I fit here. And it's just recognizing where we are and understanding the language that we're using internally, because that's the thing that's driving us. We think that we do everything from our conscious thoughts, but it's our subconscious brain that's running the show. It's the thing that gets us moving. It's the thing that gets us thinking. It's the thing that brings us the information for our conscious brain to make the thoughts. So I think the more that we can talk about that, the more that we can understand it, and the more that we can help people identify what label am I using and how is it serving me, then actually we can start to change those labels, and we change the label and we change our outcome.
Very much so. I find it absolutely fascinating how you can have these deep-rooted beliefs that are there from when you were very young, and actually you can still be, well, allowing them control over your life. And those beliefs sit there in the back of our minds, and we don't do anything about it. And we let our brains subconsciously affect the outcome of our lives, right? And all it takes is that self-sabotaging belief to really damage your life. And eventually you might wake up one day and go, oh, I need to do something about this. And that is a magical moment when you become aware and actually you start re-implanting these beliefs. It's a fascinating time in one's life, I think, really.
Well, yeah, because we have these I am statements, and we all have them. We create them, as you say, by the age of 7, and we enforce them by the age of 14, and we pretty much embed them by the age of 21. And then for the rest of our lives, anything that happens to us that pulls back to one of those I am statements becomes like another leg on the table of that belief. And before long, we have the most stable table. But the beauty is that we live in a world of polarity. For every up, there's a down. For every left, there's a right. So whatever it is we believe about ourselves, the polar opposite is also available to us, should we choose to. And actually, when we start to understand the I am statements, and then we really start to dig into them, we can say, are these serving me? Is this how I want to think about myself? Do I want to be my own worst enemy or my own best friend? Because the only person that is with us constantly is ourselves. So actually learning how to make yourself your own friend instead of your own enemy is such an amazing breakthrough. And having been my own enemy for 46 years before I really started to understand this, the change when you can become your own friend is immense. It doesn't mean to say that you don't still get things wrong. It doesn't mean to say you don't still hold yourself accountable for the mistakes that you make, but it means that you can actually treat yourself with the same compassion with which you treat anybody else that's external to you. Because that's one of the challenges, certainly one of the challenges I found with my imposter, is most people that have met me think that I'm really kind and really considerate. And yet, if you had ever heard the language that I used on myself, you wouldn't want to spend any time with me at all. That person's evil. And I would never use that on anybody else. I would never dream of being so hurtful to another human being. But I was that hurtful to myself. And I'm not alone in that. A lot of us are. And the challenge that you've got is the voice you use to yourself is so plausible. It's so realistic that you absolutely believe it to be true. And it doesn't matter what evidence there is or how many people tell you that the opposite is true. You just can't see it until you start to do the work. And I guess that's why we want to share this, because having now had that breakthrough and realized that actually I can change that outlook, I can change that view of the world. And more importantly for me, I realized that the voice we talk to ourselves becomes the voice we teach our children to talk to themselves. And that broke my heart. I don't want my little girl to ever talk to herself the way I talk to myself. And I don't get to just say, do as I say, not as I do. Kids learn by what we do, not just by what we say. And so if I want her to have a better internal voice, I need to find a better internal voice for myself.
Very much so. And excuse me. But I think also when you notice other people doing it, I mean, we've all been in a meeting where someone might perhaps call themselves an idiot, or they might say, oh, you're so silly, and say that to themselves, right? But actually it's unconscious. They don't even actually know that they're saying that to themselves. But when you start studying this phenomenon and you understand confidence levels and you understand how they affect outcomes, then you can notice these behaviors in other people, and then you can pull them up on those behaviors. And that's what tomorrow is all about. Tomorrow is all about having some massive breakthroughs, helping people to get over this. And, you know, I think it's a fascinating study. I mean, some of the people who we've interviewed in the past year, have suffered from this. I mean, even Michael Tobin, OBE, suffered from this. He stood up. He actually was on a panel with Bill Gates, and he sat there and he sort of, I think he mentions it in the podcast that we did, and he just sort of looks over and he looks over there and he's Bill Gates is over there, and he's like, I'm sitting on a panel with Bill Gates, right? Like, and I find that absolutely fascinating how, even the most successful people that we know. I mean, I reached out to Alistair Stewart, the newsreader in the UK, who he covered the Berlin Wall when I was a kid, right? And I actually interviewed him last year with Michael, and that was really strange, because I was interviewing an icon, right? Like someone who I had seen covering the Berlin Wall when it was knocked down, yeah. And every other news story throughout the 48 however many years of my life that I had television, right? When we had TV, there were like 3 channels, right? 2 were black and white, and then there was a color one, right? Like, that's how insane it is. But I remember interviewing him and actually thinking back to that situation, and at that point I was like, oh my God, like he's so famous, like everybody knows who he is. He's one of the most likable people on the news, right? And at that point, my inner imposter kicked in, but I didn't even know what that was because I hadn't begun researching it. And it's only until we started talking about imposter syndrome, and then I thought back to those interviews, like I interviewed Stanley Tucci. And at the beginning, I didn't really know how famous he was. And then it kind of got a little bit further into the interview, and I was like, wow, like this guy's been in so many films, like it's crazy. And then at that point, my imposter syndrome, I wouldn't say it was imposter syndrome. It was sort of more just a confidence thing. Like, wow, look, I'm talking to him, and like, look, he's over there and I'm over here. And it's a fascinating study. I think, we've got people from Microsoft, we've got people from IBM tomorrow. We've got lots and lots of people. We've got Lisa Ventura, who's big in cybersecurity. A lot of people she's interviewing as well. So I think we're starting the day quite early. It's going to be a long, long day. So even people in America are going to get their chance to kind of talk about it and share their experiences with it, right? But if you want to follow the hashtag, it's actually IISAD 2021 will be on the end of it for this year. But you can also use IISAD if you want to. But it should be a lot of fun, I think. Kim, what do you think?
No, I agree. It should be loads of fun, and hopefully it will give people some insights and some useful and actionable advice that they can take to overcome their imposter. So hopefully people will get involved and it will be useful.
I hope so. So thank you for tuning in, and let's try and be politically correct as we can. And call people out on their bad attitudes. I think is important too.
Fabulous. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Take care.
Thanks, Kim. Me too.